We good? Okay. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to GLE Committee. What is today? Today is Tuesday, January 27th, and we're going to begin with a briefing from the Department of Information Technology. I believe we have presenting with us today Secretary Katie Savage, and then we also have Mary Jacobs as well presented today. So the floor is yours, Secretary Savage.
Great. Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me all right? Great. Getting a thumbs up
Yes.
from Mercy. So I'll take that as an invitation to proceed.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I'm excited to be here today. Congratulations to everyone on the new committee. My name is Katie Savage. I am the Secretary for the Department of Information Technology. You can go to the next slide. I am joined today by Marcy Jacobs, who is our Chief.
Sorry to interrupt you, Secretary Savage. If you could just use a little bit of a louder volume for us.
Is it? Okay, you guys are really very quiet for me. I'll do my best.
Okay. All right.
I'll do my best. Could you advance to the next slide, please? Great. Please jump in again if I'm too quiet. My name is Katie Savage. I'm the Secretary of the Department of Information Technology. Today I'll be covering some of our priorities along with our AI strategy, Maryland Digital Service, and the Office of Security Management. Next slide, please. All right, I am joined today by Marcy Jacobs, who is our Chief Digital Experience Officer, along with James Saunders, who is our Acting Chief Information Security Officer. So I'll start today by talking about some of the priorities and wins we've accomplished since taking office in January of 2023. Next slide. Next slide. So one of our first priorities at Do It has been to dramatically overhaul the way the department has been structured. It was very important to me to bring in leadership over each of these various competencies. So you'll see, in addition to our Chief Operating Officer, Melissa Lehman, we have built out 2 Chief Technology Offices, one for platform services and client services. So things like Google, ServiceNow, Microsoft, etc., along with our service desk. Another CTO position for our 2 infrastructure networks, one which is our broadband network and one which is our radio network, Maryland First, which primarily serves first responders around the state. Marcy Jacobs, who you'll hear from next, is a brand new office that we created. She oversees the Maryland Digital Service, and that is a group of profiles that you would see on a software development team: web experience, service design, product management, and engineering. James, who you'll also hear from, has been hard at work building out our Office of Security Management, which includes state and local cyber security, along with cyber resilience, a brand new governance, risk, and compliance team, along with the Office of State Privacy. The governor's office also moved the Office of the State Chief Data Officer to Do It a couple of years ago as well. That team is led by Natalie Evans-Harris. She oversees data services, operations, management, practices, and literacy. And we have a bill from her that we'll be hearing from in our next session. And then lastly, in July, the Maryland Benefits, formerly known as MD Think program, was moved officially to Do It. So we're joined by Executive Director Pat McLaughlin to oversee that work, primarily on integrated eligibility as well. Next slide. So 3 priorities I've tried to anchor as our North Stars at the agency. One is building Do It in agency capacity. So as we just discussed, I've brought in a lot of talent at the agency, and now we are trying to extend that talent to the other agencies as well. We've helped hire CIOs at several of the big 5 agencies, along with installing product managers, designers, and other software development and web service profiles that you'd see, again, in a typical software development team around the state. Marcy will talk a little bit more about that and how that has been a tremendous part of our major IT development project reform. The second big priority is user-centered service delivery. And what I mean by that is ensuring that we're designing for outcomes with real people in mind. We don't want to just focus on software upgrades or new platforms. We want to be thinking about who we're serving and why we're serving. A big part of that is also ensuring that our services are accessible to all. So we've also created an Office of Accessibility, which is also part of Marcy's team, that focuses on ensuring that everything that we build or deliver is accessible to all Marylanders. And then finally, centralization to support agency missions. The governor, as you know, has kicked off a modernization initiative last year, and we've been very central to that work. Internal to do it, we're focused on how we can buy and build more reusable platforms. So for example, we don't have multiple agencies building electronic health record systems. Another good example, when I started at the state, we had 13 different Microsoft contracts, and we've consolidated those down significantly. So those are the types of things that we're looking to do. Where it makes sense for DoIT to create a central offering to all agencies, we want to provide that to reduce time and costs for agencies to administer and procure those platforms. Next slide. So a few accomplishments over the course of the next slides I just want to highlight. We spoke about the department-wide modernization and bringing in some of these new offices. James will talk a lot about the Office of Security Management, but a big achievement there, we've scaled from 5 full-time people to 22 full-time staff for the past 2 years. We also launched the state's first bug bounty program and created an information security officer program to embed talent across the state. I spoke about transitioning MD Think, now known as Maryland Benefits. One of the big accomplishments there, this past July, we launched One Application, which is a single application for 5 public benefits that has been utilized by over 250,000 Marylanders since its launch in July to apply for their benefits. Next slide. Next slide. In addition to establishing the Maryland Digital Service, which Marcy will speak about, we also launched the state's first comprehensive digital accessibility policy in partnership with the Maryland Department of Disabilities. AI readiness, I'll speak about this next. Following the governor's executive order, we have been focused on both responsible and productive use of AI. And then in the broadband and infrastructure aspect of things, we established the state's digital infrastructure group to better coordinate statewide digital infrastructure planning and investment. So this includes a real-time view of where our various underground assets and state assets are across various agencies. It also includes a body to review this work and ensure that we're going together in planning and building new infrastructure. Next slide. So one of the accomplishments I wanted to share and go a bit deeper into today is our work around AI. Next slide. So, the advent of generative AI, it has really exploded since I've been in this role. And we've tried to focus on 2 core principles. One being the responsible use of AI, so ensuring that we're documenting our work, we're using AI ethically, we have a strategy, we can point to the underlying data. We also want to be productive with our use of AI. So that has meant launching pilots, for example, and taking agencies through real-world business problems that AI could be a partner in solving. So a few artifacts that I wanted to point to that we have accomplished so far. So first, we worked last year with the General Assembly to pass SB 818, which shapes AI policy around the state. Last year, we launched and published the 2025 AI Strategy Roadmap, which lays out across 13 different verticals how we are thinking about AI strategy in the state. Natalie Evans-Harris, who leads our data program, has been working very closely on establishing what we call authoritative data sources, so understanding the data that goes into our models. Marcy will speak a little bit about experimentation and adoption, but we've had a couple of really exciting pilots take place already. James has the governance team under him as well. So as part of governance, risk, and compliance, we're building out strong AI policies. We have launched literacy programs for state employees, which are available through our Workday portal. And then finally, we've built a community around AI. So we have a monthly AI community of practice, which tends to have hundreds of state employees participate. And it's become a network for individuals around the state who are interested in learning about AI. Next slide. We touched on this quite a bit, but these are the kind of centralized efforts that really speak to the power of AI to solve statewide problems. So at Do It, we see ourselves as responsible for setting direction, for coordinating the use of AI. We also have the governor's AI subcabinet, which allows us to link efforts across agencies. We focus on impact, we focus on scaling, we focus on the data, and we also focus, importantly, on the type of AI infrastructure that we can provide through our various platforms. Next slide. But the real exciting potential, in my view, is the universal tools that we've made available to our workforce to encourage AI-driven innovation. So a few examples of what that looks like. We've made platforms and tools available to all of our state employees. So every employee, for example, has access to Google Gemini, and 1 in 3 state employees are actively using it. As I mentioned, we have training and skills available through Workday for our workforce. We've done this in partnership with DBM and the Department of Labor. We have the community of practice. We're working closely with the Department of General Services on how we can procure more AI solutions. We also continue to build an ecosystem around us, partnering with academia, nonprofits, industry, and government. And finally, Marcy's team has been really instrumental in working with agencies to solution and deploy these solutions through the Maryland Digital Service. Next slide. So a few examples of what this looks like. We want agencies to come to us not with, I want to use this tool, but with a real problem that they want to solve. And we work with them to determine if AI would be an appropriate use or appropriate response to that problem. So a few examples of what that looks like. One really exciting example is translation. So we can improve accessibility in any language utilizing AI. We are also looking at how we can extract data from various documents, which can speed that work up across agencies. Coding assistance is another really great example. We've seen this with the Maryland benefits work, where we're able to give our engineers the ability to generate code very, very quickly. A few areas of application: call centers, for example, helping staff either answer questions very quickly or automate some of the responses. Permitting and licensing, which Marcy will talk about, using AI to shorten the turnaround and direct people who are looking for this type of information or ability to proceed much more quickly. And then benefits delivery. As we've seen with HR1, for example, there's a lot of new regulations, and AI can often be utilized to pull policy together very quickly and make sense of complex policy areas. Next slide. So with that, I will turn it over to Marcy Jacobs to talk about the Maryland Digital Service.
Thank you, Secretary. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Next slide, please. As Secretary Savage mentioned, my name is Marcy Jacobs. I lead the Maryland Digital Service. We are a relatively new organization, and really the intent behind the creation of the Maryland Digital Service is to improve the access to government services online, making it easier and more cost-effective for Marylanders to engage with government. We've had a lot of accomplishments in the past year, and on the next slide, I'd like to walk through some of the foundational elements that we've put in place and what we have started to be able to deliver. Next slide, please. The team has grown significantly in the past year. We've gone from 22 to 49 staff. This is really in response to demand from agencies for more user experience, product management, and engineering capabilities. A lot of these people are deployed onto agency projects, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but really decentralizing our ability to work with agencies and support their needs. We also awarded a very large contract vehicle to 8 local firms, which gives us the ability to quickly tap into digital service companies that expands our ability to support. On the delivery side, we have launched a new secure web platform, Drupal, for all of our state websites. And that is hundreds of websites that right now are in a insecure end-of-life environment. The Maryland.gov site launched in December. We've had 2 sites launched so far in January, and we have about 6 more in the next month and a half, and many more to come now that we have this platform in place. We've also implemented a statewide analytics program that gives both the public and state agencies better data to understand where people are going and what they are doing on websites, which helps us use that information to improve the experience. Secretary Savage also mentioned about AI pilots and experimentation. We recently completed a pilot with the Department of the Environment, enabling self-service document access for a critical piece of the construction journey, which is site selection. Previously, that was done through PIA requests, which required a huge amount of burden and time, both on the staff side and also on the developer side. This project is anticipated to save a significant amount of staff hours and make our environment much more developer friendly. Next slide, please. My team is also responsible for oversight of the major IT development portfolio, or MITDPs. So MITDPs are all technology projects, development projects that are over $5 million. And this portfolio is about 60 projects. They are at various stages of planning, implementation, and maintenance. But historically, there have been significant issues with the delivery of outcomes from this portfolio. So one of the critical functions that my team is putting in place is really reforming the oversight process. Some of that is around the staffing roles that we talked about previously, and bringing the right type of talent into agencies to help lead some of these efforts, where in the past we have delegated a lot of that responsibility to our vendors to determine the direction of the projects and set some of the budget and scoping. This is what we're calling an intervention, where we have deployed teams with the design, product, and engineering skill sets, and those individuals are partnering with the agency to help lead the MITDP. Lastly, we are publishing an MITDP dashboard actually this week that will increase the visibility into the status of these projects, how effectively they are performing, where they are running into blockers. The initial release of the dashboard will have a minimal amount of data, and as these reforms are put in place, which will change over the next several months, there will be a lot more information that's added over time. So on the next slide, I want to talk a little bit more about one of the interventions that we're putting in place. The governor's office has asked my team to support the acceleration of permitting and licensing in the state. And permitting and licensing is a whole lot of paper forms, everything from getting a job in your desired field, occupational and professional licensing, to starting and managing a business, to developing and building a property. It also includes a whole host of other types of permits. We have projects in these 3 areas, and I want to talk about one that we are doing under the 3rd bullet, making it easier to develop and build property in the state. Next slide, please. So for one of our deployed teams, we are supporting the Department of the Environment on their portal MITDP project. We deployed a user experience designer and a product manager to support this team. And really their focus has been around discovery and better problem definition for what the agency was trying to solve. What we learned was that the critical outcome that they were trying to drive was really around turnaround time. And turnaround time is impacted by a number of factors, mostly being paper checks, which take a long time to process, the complexity of the permit forms, which vary widely, some of which are still collected on paper. Even finding the correct permit is problematic, and sometimes people go down the wrong path and fill out information that they then need to recreate. And the permit status was also causing a lot of manual work and burden, because a lot of the construction, the developers were having to contact MDE to find out the status of their permit. So through this discovery, we were able to use data to prioritize the efforts that we were supporting. On the next slide, please. The delivery approach was really focused on how do we use data to drive what we are prioritizing. 20% of the permits cover 80% of the volume coming in. Previously, all of these forms, these 400 forms, were treated relatively equally. And a huge amount of effort would go into potentially converting a form or digitizing a form that might be used incredibly infrequently. So our project plan really shifted to focusing on volume and not so much on permit count, so that we could cover a huge amount of the volume with a smaller effort. Next slide, please. This is a really fundamental piece of some of the reforms that we are putting in place, which is really taking an iterative approach to how we develop. So starting with that real problem definition, what is it that we are solving for? And using that to inform what is the smallest thing that we can do where we get value back both to the state and to our customers, and then working on the next piece and the next piece. These smaller bets de-risk the overall project, helps us get a return on our investment much more quickly than what we have previously seen, and helps us learn throughout the process, which can in turn de-scope some of the things that maybe we thought were important, like all of these 400 forms, as we get more information. So that is an update on MDDS and oversight reform, and I will turn it over to James.
All right, thank you, Marcy. Confirming and assuming everyone can hear me.
Yep, we can hear you loud and clear.
Perfect. Good afternoon, everyone. To start, I kind of want to set a quick frame on how I view cybersecurity in its intersection with technology. We're in 2026, and I hold the opinion that constituent services are technology services. And for example, when a Marylander applies for health benefits, renewing a permit, or I guess what's relevant right now, checking road conditions, they're interacting with state digital infrastructure. Our employees, we're using laptops, cell phones, increasingly artificial intelligence to deliver value to Marylanders. But every one of those digital connections introduce risk. And it's my office, the Office of Security Management, which is located in the Department of Information Technology. We're here to help identify and manage those risks so that our sister agencies can stay focused on what they do best, which is delivering value to every Marylander across the state. Next slide, please. So the way that I look at the Office of Security Management and the way that it was legislated is that we have four main areas of responsibility. First, we set the proverbial rules of the road, and that's by defining cybersecurity and privacy strategies, policies, standards, guidelines. Second, we provide centralized cybersecurity services. In today's, ever-increasing threat landscape where threat actors are using AI, threat actors are being more emboldened to attack governments across the world, I hold the opinion that it's important that we centralize visibility, we centralize our response capabilities under DO IT so that we can ensure that every agency has a protected, unified defense so that we can detect and respond and neutralize threats as quickly as possible. Third, we lead statewide cybersecurity incident response, especially for the executive branch. So when a cyber event happens, it's my team at the helm. We're coordinating with our partners, be it MDM, the victim agency, National Guard, federal partners, industry partners, so that we can recover quickly. And then lastly, reporting. One, we are legislatively mandated to report the cyber preparedness annual report, but we also do other recurring ad hoc reporting as well. Next slide, please. So I'd like to take a brief moment to kind of break down how the Office of Security Management is structured. So first, we have state privacy. The chief privacy officer for the state is a member of my team. She's my direct report, and she is working around the clock to help agencies and system owners implement fair information practice principles so that we can ensure data minimization, transparency, and individual rights are built into every system and every service that we own. My next organization is the state and local. So I look at this group as my whole of state arm. So they serve as the primary bridge between OSM, state agencies, local governments, municipalities, and increasingly critical infrastructure providers. And we do this through our information security officers, which Secretary Savage mentioned earlier, where we have ISOs assigned to every state agency at this point, and we have local ISOs available to support our local government and entity partners. A third group is cyber technologies. I like to think of them as the group that makes us go from a technology perspective. So they manage our security architecture. They're thinking through how we implement zero trust. How do we prepare for post-quantum future? And they also manage our platforms and tools that we use across the state to protect our services. The fourth group, which is probably one of the newest groups that is rapidly growing, is our governance, risk, and compliance. So this team, this group, is responsible for managing the life cycle for the cybersecurity and privacy policy standards and guidelines. And a quick example of that work is they led the charge in preparing the new cybersecurity and privacy suite, which we're trending towards launch mid-February, I believe February 18th, which will replace the IT security manual. And more recently, this is the group that is picking up AI governance and working towards adopting and infusing it into the overall risk management framework we're building for the state. And then last, the cyber resilience. So this is where our cyber defenders live. This is our blue team. They focus on tactical defense. This is where the Maryland SOC, or Security Operations Center, exists, as well as the Maryland Information Sharing and Analysis Center, the Maryland ISAC. And they're working 24/7, 365, hunting across the networks that we have available to, receiving intelligence from our peers and partners so that we can identify any risk or threats in our environment and get rid of them before they can disrupt our services. Next slide, please. So from an accomplishments perspective, 2025 was a great year. I want to touch on a handful of them. So the first is the Vulnerability Disclosure Program, or the VDP. So this enables security researchers from across the nation, actually from across the globe, to report issues to the state and to our local government partners that say, hey, we see a weakness on your website. Take this opportunity to try to resolve it. And I think this is a critical marker for maturity of the state cybersecurity program that this exists. And I'll say, since we launched this on October 21st to when I ran the numbers last week, we received 250 validated reports from researchers, and roughly 1/3 of those were critical and high of nature. And the teams are working with the respective parties to resolve those as quickly as possible. This next one is actually something we launched on the same day on October 21st as well, which was the Maryland ISAC Binding Operation Directive, which, and the two things, but the one I want to talk about here is that it increased the enrollment eligibility for vendors who provide IT services to the state government. to join the Maryland ISAC. And then secondarily, it extends the Maryland ISAC membership to critical infrastructure providers in the state as well. And my rationale behind that is for our vendor community, they need to have the same intelligence, same information we have to protect their environment, because we depend on them to help deliver services. So we don't want them to be an Achilles heels for what we're providing. And for critical infrastructure providers, they're critical for what we do: electricity, water, transportation, and other critical infrastructure domains. We want to make sure they have the same information as well, and also share information with us so that we can share that amongst the state agency and local governments as well. And then the last one I'll touch on for time is we fully launched the state ISO program pretty much a year ago, almost to date. So as I mentioned before, every state agency now has a ISO who serves as a liaison back to OSM or a risk advisor to help them navigate their unique challenges, adopt our centralized cybersecurity services, and mostly to drive security maturity across the board. Next slide. I think I have one more. Okay, perfect. So where am I focusing OSM on in 2026? So it's really three main verticals that I'm looking at. First is under governance. One, we need to update and publish our cybersecurity and privacy policies. Again, we're trending towards mid-February, and I'm really excited about that. We work with local government partners, state agency partners, we work with OLA to develop this new set of standards and policies. So excited about that. Second, we are resuming our biannual cybersecurity preparedness assessments so that we can work with all the agencies to identify any areas for improvement. Next is the cyber defense. So we have to continue driving centralization. I mentioned before that in order for us to be effective in cybersecurity response and defense, we can't have fragmentation amongst the different agencies. We need to have a single view so that we can respond as one organization. Next is infusing zero trust and getting ready for a PQC, post-quantum cryptography. So pretty much figuring out how we implement zero trust and start rolling it out into our systems, and then start planning with industry partners on how do we transition from traditional encryption to post-quantum encryption. And then the last vertical is around critical infrastructure. I mentioned that we expanded the ISAC to support critical infrastructure, so we really want to drive up enrollment there. And then the last one, which is extremely important to me, is deepening our partnerships. Cybersecurity is very much a team sport, so we have to continue growing as partners across state, local, as well as with industry. I think with that, that's our last slide, Secretary Savage, and I'm more than happy to take any questions.
Great. Thanks so much, James and Marcy. We really appreciate it. So with that, we'll turn it over to the committee for any questions.
Awesome. No, thank you all for that presentation. We have a question from the Vice Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Secretary Savage, thank you for all this work that you've been doing under your leadership and the guidance of your team. We're in a much better place this year than we were last year and in years past. Also, members of the Government Operations and Ethics Subcommittee, if any of this was over your head today, you might want to go back and rewatch it, because you're going to be living this stuff from as long as you're on that subcommittee. A couple of questions. Ms. Jacobs, the speed to value, have you had an opportunity to employ this strategy yet?
Yes, we do have, I think, 6 deployed teams right now. And what we are seeing is that where we have people deployed, MDE is a great example, they are asking for more staff. They are saying that having these roles has been critical to updating their strategy and approach, and they want additional support on other projects as well.
And Mr. Saunders, with the OSM, when can we expect the annual report?
So I have a near final draft on my computer right now. So I'm working with Secretary Savage and team to get that published.
And are we currently using zero trust strategy, or is that something you're working toward?
So we are using zero trust. So what I meant by, defining it is actually documenting the strategy and the architecture behind it. But across our tools and technologies, the concepts are actually being used in different parts of our ecosystem.
Okay, and one more thing, Madam Secretary, it's good to hear that we have an ISO in each of the agencies now. Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Delegate Sample Hughes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon. And Mr. Saunders, I wanted to just get a little bit of understanding because as our Vice Chair noted, we're trying to take all this information in and understand it to the best of our ability. You spoke about vulnerability program. I know there's another word in between, but I just can't read my writing right now. I wanted to ask you, for the local governments piece of it, logistics-wise, do they enter into this agreement willingly with you? And then is there a timeline of when your agency reaches out to them and there has to be some level of response or correction as to what's going on? I'm just not fully understanding the whole process.
Certainly. So it's the Vulnerability Disclosure Program, BDP. So when we issued the binding operating directive towards the tail end of October, the way that we had the local governments involved is through the use of Network Maryland. So the state CISO by law has the authority to levy different cybersecurity requirements for users of Network Maryland. I will say to date, our local government partners have been great partners with us on this. And as far as timelines go, so normally the way the process works is that we receive the report from the security researcher. We validate it first, because the last thing we want to do is send bad information to a local government partner or even a state agency that they will say this isn't relevant or real. So from there, we have timelines established within the binding operations directive, which, if I recall correctly offhand, it gives about a week to provide us a response or acknowledgement of receiving the vulnerability, and then work with us to figure out how long it's going to take and maybe what resources you're going to need in order to resolve that weakness that was discovered.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Delegate Ruth.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Secretary Savage. So as regards to AI, are we ensuring that there is human oversight? It is, a developing, obviously, very rapidly technology, and just to ensure that there's human oversight in those areas.
Absolutely. It's a great question. So we have published the state's responsible AI policy, which is available. We also have added AI review to our overall software review process. So DO-IT has run for many years a software review process where any software that state agencies might be utilizing comes through DO-IT for review. So with the explosion of AI tools, we've augmented the sorts of questionnaires and things that we look at to look at the sort of privacy, ethical concerns, things like that. As James noted, we do have the state's privacy officer under him, at DO-IT as well. So we're very cognizant of, what data is being collected, where it's being stored. To your question specifically about human in the loop, that's something we also want to track as well. And I think, Marcy, as well as Pat McLaughlin, who, is part of runs the Maryland benefits team, it's really important as we're rolling out AI for things like looking at benefits that we want to have a human in the loop. So it's often ensuring that we're using that for review, but there's a final human in the loop to make sure that there are no errors. So we appreciate that.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And just one follow-up question, Madam Chair. Thank you. So when you talk about ethical use of AI, when you're procuring these systems, are you in some way controlling for bias to ensure that they don't have inherent bias built in, biases for
Right.
Go ahead, sorry.
Right. No, it's a really great question. One of the challenges with AI is that, it's trained on various models. And
Right.
so that can, continue to perpetuate bias. But we have a continuous monitoring and evaluation process in place. so that we're continually looking, at how the software is being utilized. And if we're getting reports of, bias, whether explicit or implicit, we're able to track that. And it goes back to, the procurement standards as well. That's something that's also part of our intake process, is we're looking at, as we buy these technologies, are we evaluating the types of underlying methodology that the software went through as part of its development process, so that we can ensure that we're tracking for those things. So it's imperfect, but it's something we're very much monitoring.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Delegate Ruth. Actually, I do want to ask, because Delegate Ruth brought up a good point around the biases aspect. I'm curious if you guys can talk a little bit more in general about how often, like if in your policy there's a scheduled period, a time frame for when you do review the AI, because it's ever evolving. I'm new to the subject, but I'm imagining it can evolve very quickly. So I'm just wondering if there is a specific time frame that you utilize to review your different AI tools.
Sure. I might actually turn that over to James if you want to talk about the ATO process writ large and how that might capture the continuous monitoring and evaluation of various software.
Yeah, certainly. So the ATO, the authority to operate process, is defined part of risk management framework that I mentioned during my presentation. So the idea behind that is that we set a particular schedule and cadence for checking the security, privacy, and AI governance of the different systems across the state. Now, I will say that this is currently in development. We're working on it, and we'll publish appropriate standards and documentation. But to touch on the AI component of it specifically, one of the things I am tracking now that OSM is managing governance is to figure out what does that cadence should look like specifically for AI, considering that some of the models and vendors that we're using, they're constantly updating, constantly changing, improving what they're providing. Some are doing it daily, some are doing weekly, some are doing monthly, et cetera. So we got to figure out the best cadence with the resources we have available to achieve that. I can't say I have that solved just yet, but it's something that we're baking into our oversight and governance processes.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Delegate Schindler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you guys very much. I'm very encouraged by your efforts for efficiency and innovation. I'm very encouraged to see that. I thank Delegate Ruth because my question was originally going to be around guardrails for AI and what was in place, but I'm interested to go and read that report. But I did have one other question for you, and that's when we talk about consolidation and reduction of redundancy. Has the department looked at all at redundancy and trying to eliminate costs as far as overlapping services between the Google Suite and Office 365 and some of those overlapping, services that are provided with that?
Sure. So that's very much something that we've looked at. At this time, it's a complex question because we have, frankly, both platforms embedded in all of our agencies. But it's something we continue to evaluate. At this time, we have Google's collaboration software largely in use for productivity. That's been the primary usage. And as I mentioned, we've rolled out Gemini, which is their AI tool across the state as part of that productivity suite. At the same time, we continue to invest in Microsoft, not only because of the collaboration tools, but frankly, because of the cybersecurity tools. When James came on board, that was one of the first things that we looked at. Microsoft has a number of cybersecurity tools that are in a single ecosystem. And that was one of the challenges when I came to the state, was we had constellation of various cybersecurity tools. So if you're familiar with Splunk, for example, there's various things that we found that we might be able to gain from the Microsoft environment. And so a lot of James's work, in addition to all the other incredible accomplishments that he mentioned, has been working with me and the team to consolidate our cybersecurity suite into a lot of what is frankly already provided as part of our Microsoft offering. So that's how we're thinking about it right now, but we're continuing to look at how we can find more efficiencies.
Thank you. Delegate Solomon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Secretary, it's nice to see you and your team. Just a couple of questions for you. Unsurprisingly, you will probably not be shocked by the topic related to some of the audits that we've had, and appreciate the work that you and your team have done, not only to work collaboratively, I think with the Joint Audit Committee and former HGO committee and our partners in the Senate, but I know we'll continue on this committee. I know you all are not the Department of General Services, and this audit sort of fell under them, but the audit that we just saw on the procurement system for Emma, I was wondering if you could just give us an update on, I know DoIT is engaged now heavily with DGS. What's your role in that? You know, I know there seems to be a collaboration, but obviously it's sort of come to the forefront after the initial contract was signed, sort of failed. We've now signed the second contract. So I'm wondering if you could give us an update on that.
No, I appreciate the question, and I'll turn it over to Marcy as well for additional thoughts. But at a high level, I think it's a really great example of some of the MITDP reforms we've tried to put in place. We have tried to both improve oversight. So Emma, the e-procurement system, is an MITDP, and a major IT development project. So we do have oversight responsibility for that. And that's been something that's been a huge focus of Marcy's team. She's hired an entire team to look at how do we track those projects better, and not just on time and on budget, but frankly, looking at, for example, the first, I believe the first implementation was not successful because it didn't necessarily account for human-centered design. It was a big award up front, opposed to small incremental awards measuring progress. So that's a really good example of what we're trying to do differently with regard to oversight. It's also been a good example of how we've tried to do intervention as well. So we have been working with them to hire, at this point, I think they've hired 2 staff members, dedicated staff members, to actually run that project, which is something we've tried to encourage for all the MITDPs. And then we do have a project manager on our side, of the DoIT side, that's trying to provide assistance as well. So I think it's a really strong example of how we're taking that sort of dual approach of both improving the way we do oversight, as well as where we can provide some intervention with our staff as well. And Marcy, if there's anything to add, please do.
I think you covered most of it, Secretary. I would just add that with this new staff that they have hired, which is a requirement now of the oversight program, we are starting to see more iterative development. So I am having extensive conversations with them about an upcoming release that they are planning, ensuring that they are thinking about users throughout the process, and really starting to see some changes in their approach. I think that they are early in this kind of change journey, but they seem very committed to making the changes that we've been recommending.
I was going to say, so when you say committed, if there is a dispute between DoIT and DGS, let's just say, for example, on the way something should be procured, does that ultimately fall to, or the way the contract should be set up, does that ultimately fall to the independent agency to make the decision? You're sort of there as an advisor, as opposed to, the IT expertise lies in your agency, and so the decision will be yours?
Secretary, do you want to take that one?
Sure. So it is a complicated question, I would say, or historically it's not something, a power that DoIT has historically enforced. I would say prior to my tenure, if an agency, would submit a budget request to DoIT and it was largely signed off on, one of the powers that we have is that we don't necessarily need to fund them at the full amount, which might inhibit them from being able to move forward with the procurement or continue down that particular path. Marcy has an incredible chart we should probably find that shows the volume of requests we got from agencies to continue their MITDPs, and where we said we don't feel comfortable with this development path, And we provided a smaller dollar amount, to Marcy's point, to ensure that they were making smaller iterative progress before sort of, awarding the full amount to a vendor that we might not feel comfortable with, or a solution that we might not feel comfortable with. So we have been increasingly exercising that ability to frankly shorten or in some cases hold up procurements that we don't feel are in the best interest of the project.
Great. And then, Madam Chair, one last question. Just switching gears, Marcy, I appreciated you mentioning and giving the example around the permitting reform, but you also mentioned licensing, and we obviously had another audit that we looked at earlier this fall around the health professions boards. And one of the issues that was raised was sort of the lack, to your point, lack of standardization, IT issues, horrific paperwork examples to the point that you raised about checks. Are you all working on a uniform licensing system for those boards as well? And if so, do you have the authority, does the authority exist within MDH, with the Maryland Department of Health, to make sure that those boards are actually using them? Or what's the sort of evolution of what you're working on with them, if they're included?
Yeah, it's a great question. So there are two efforts that we are working on related to occupational licensing. One with Department of Labor, I think they have roughly 30 boards, and one with Department of Health, they have 22 health boards. We are starting with nursing, which was their top priority licensing program. And the intent is that the solution that is developed for nursing will be scaled for the other boards. I don't want to speak for Department of Health. I know that they have been having a number of conversations with the boards who are becoming increasingly interested in a centralized solution. The team that we have deployed on that project is service designers, and service designers really focus on how do humans successfully navigate this system, whether the humans are on state staff side, or the humans are nurses, or the humans are hospital systems. So looking from all of those lenses to say, I'm an aspiring nurse in the state of Maryland, I just graduated, what is the process? What do I need to do? And to make sure that we are taking friction out of the system so that someone can move through that process quickly. If I am adjudicating what comes in, I'm a state staff person, how do I make sure that what I am getting is right, is actionable, is something where I can quickly process the information? And if I'm a hospital system, how do we make sure that the information that they are able to see about active licensing or any pending claims or issues is accurate? So we are looking at this project from multiple lenses, and we will then expand that into the subsequent boards. So dentistry, pharmacy, physical therapy, all of the other related disciplines. Some of those I would imagine will look a little bit different, but to the degree that we can streamline and have consistency across, that is the goal that we are hearing from MDH and what we are trying to guide that towards as well.
Great. Would love to follow up with you maybe separately on that, but thank you very much. And thank you for the work that your team is doing. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Absolutely. Thank you. Happy to.
Thank you. All right, our last question will be from Delegate Lehman.
Madam Chair, and thank you, Madam Secretary. I'd like to return briefly to this issue around AI guardrails, and I'm going to preface my questions by saying that I really have only a very rudimentary understanding of AI and big data, but I'm wondering, so there was a recent case that was reported where the city attorney for Annapolis may have been dismissed in part because of a court filing, a response to a federal court case against the city, where he may have cited cases that were non-existent and used quotes that were fabricated. And the Banner was reporting that the sources said that the filing had many earmarks of AI, quote unquote. So two-part question. One is, what does that mean exactly to have the earmarks of AI? And then the second broader question is, does the state have tools, or state agencies have tools for supervisors, and not to create this, sort of climate of paranoia? I think the vast majority of government employees try the very best, to the best of their ability, to do their work, well and honestly. But are there tools to discern, like in advance, if a response has the earmarks of AI, whatever that is? What are those, and do we have access to those? Thank you.
It's a really great question. I'll come back to you on more specific examples, related to this case. I think some of what we've seen as, quote unquote, earmarks could be odd language, oddly paraphrased, not in the right tone. It could also just be not the right context. But we can take a look at this case in particular and see if there are any, examples of something that might have been, a giveaway for utilizing AI and in an appropriate way. It goes back to, the previous question about ensuring that there's a human in the loop and making sure that it's not the sole source of information. And then we do want a way to check and validate for errors. As James said, it comes back to our software review process. It is challenging to keep up with it. I'm sure many are tracking, in the news stories of various, chatbots that have been utilized for different purposes, and various versions have been sycophantic, for example, and led, purportedly led users to take behaviors that encourage certain behaviors that we wouldn't want to see. And so staying on top, as James said, staying on top of the various models and releases is certainly a challenge that we're going to have at the state. James, if there's anything else you would add, please do.
Yes, certainly. I'm not necessarily familiar with the case reference, but I'll say some earmarks of AI as everything Secretary Savage mentioned. Sometimes when you're used to engaging with someone, you learn that writing style and word choices, and you get something completely different. Sometimes that can represent an earmark. The writing pattern is different. But I think what we're hitting on here is the secure usage of AI, that third domain under I think Senate Bill 818 that we had to work on, and it's all about training our workforce to use AI. AI is a tool. AI doesn't replace your own thinking and thoughts. So it's really that human in loop, the human on top of the loop, and just making sure what's produced from AI, you're reviewing it and making sure it fits whatever purpose you're doing. As far as the ability to review it, there's different technologies in place, but we do not have anything deployed at this point that can see exactly what someone is doing in AI. We can see frequency of use of AI, however.
Thank you.
One piece I'll add to that, specifically on the training, the state utilizes Workday as our human resources platform, and with the consolidation of data and privacy and security under Do It, we're looking to leverage that platform to increase the training we do for all of those things. Because to your question, there's some training that speaks specifically to how do we use AI in our hands, but it is really important for our users to understand privacy concerns. What data and where it's stored is really important for anybody to utilize or to understand as they're utilizing this technology. And they also, importantly, need to understand how important the veracity of the data is going into a system. We have a hearing next that'll include Natalie Evans-Harris, who's our Chief Data Officer, speaking about the importance of the Open Data Council and some of the work that she's doing there. And I think it's really great that we have all three legs of the stool together, security, privacy, and data, so that we can do things like policy and training all in one place, because all of those pieces really hang together.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Secretary Savage, Ms. Jacobs, and Mr. Saunders, just want to thank you all today for presenting to the committee. This is a really comprehensive overview of, I think, our not only Do It, but just some interesting topics around AI that I know we are all very interested in. So thank you all for being here today. Committee, we're going to adjourn for 5 minutes. We have to take at least 5-minute break before we begin the bill hearing. So I see you all out there. We will begin tentatively at 2:07. But thank you all. This briefing is adjourned.